And that was probably my most challenging period because when you go out in public, people are staring at you, people are looking at you, people are pointing at you. And instead of asking, hey, what happened to you? A lot of people thought I was burned. Kids were just kind of a little freaked out about it. Hi, skin friend. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Skin Reel. This week, I am really excited to have not a dermatologist or a doctor on, but someone who is struggling with a skin condition. And the skin condition we're going to talk about today is vitiligo. And my guest is LaTrese Coyt. I met her a few weeks ago at a women's conference, and I just found her story really inspiring and inspirational. And I wanted to have her on the Skin Reel to talk about the skin condition known as vitiligo. Now, you may have heard of it, you may not have heard of it, but basically vitiligo is an autoimmune condition where your own immune cells attack the cells that make pigment or your melanocytes. And so what happens is you have patches of skin that have no color whatsoever. And I'm not talking just lighter in color, I'm talking chalky milk white. And this can come up with really men, women, all ages, and all races and ethnicities. However, when you have lighter skin, a lot of times people don't even know they have vitiligo because there's not such a stark contrast versus someone with darker skin. It can be more noticeable and it can be really psychologically traumatic for people. And like a lot of skin conditions, there's a variety of severities. Some people may just have one or two little patches and the color comes back and it doesn't really affect their day-to-day life. And then other people can really lose pigment through most of their body and become essentially like a different looking person. And that's why I wanted to bring LaTrese on, because her story is really powerful. And she has really taken this challenge of living with vitiligo and used it not to define her, but actually to empower her. And I hope that if you know someone with vitiligo or you are struggling with vitiligo yourself, that you will find her message very inspirational and see her as a role model. And I can't wait to dive into this topic that we haven't yet addressed on the Skin Reel. So be sure to stick around. LaTrese, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have someone on like you who can really share your story in a personal way. Instead of me just telling people what vitiligo is, you can really share with people what it is like to live with it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Mina. I appreciate meeting you last week and having the opportunity to talk to you a little bit more about it.
Wonderful. Well, I introduced you previously, but I would love for the listeners just to hear who you are in your own words.
So my name is LaTrese Coyt. I am the National Director of Sports Experiential Relationships at a nonprofit organization. And what that means is I work with sports teams to provide experiential opportunities to young people. I'm from Ohio. I've been in Atlanta, 37 years. So really, I'm from Atlanta. My kids were born here. So I have 2 kids and 1 grandchild. And my passion is traveling and alternative fitness.
Oh, tell me more. What is alternative fitness? Just sitting on your couch?
Alternative fitness is pole dancing.
Okay.
Which I've been doing since 2009. I just retired earlier this year from teaching. I was like, I'm 59 years old. I can't teach anymore. I'm just going to take classes. I want to be a student again.
I can attest that is a workout. I did it at my bachelorette party. So, LaTrese, you also do a lot of advocacy work for vitiligo. Is that right?
Correct. So it's interesting when people who know me, they'll be like, oh, I have a spot, or my hair might be shedding or something like that. And, the first thing I'm going to tell them is make sure you go see a dermatologist so that you can get the proper diagnosis, because vitiligo can lead to other things. Like for me, I was diagnosed, I think at 28. So right after my son was born, I had a spot on the back of my neck. And I went to the dermatologist. Ironically, I found out that the dermatologist I went to go see was part of the Tuskegee experiment. So that totally freaked me out. So I then found another doctor to treat me. And so I actually went into treatment. And most people, it's really up to you if you want to go into treatment, because for years there was no cure. So we had to deal with, you've got this disease or autoimmune disease. I don't want to really call it a disorder. I don't want to call it a disease. You have this autoimmune disorder, and it can affect things like your hair. Some people have alopecia along with it. It can also be associated with lupus. So you get all of the tests to make sure that this is not happening, this is happening. So for me, I did suffer from a form of alopecia called alopecia areata. So with that, your hair falls out, but it grows back. But it grows back really white. So it's not blonde, it's not gray, it's stark white hair. And for me, the texture was different as well. So you'd have some parts of my hair that were really soft, and then you'd have this really unruly part of your hair for me. So that was part of my journey, was my vitiligo was linked to me having alopecia.
I want to even just step back even before that. What, in your words, is vitiligo?
So vitiligo is an autoimmune disorder that attacks your melanin. So you begin to, over time, lose the melanin in your skin. And it doesn't just attack people of color. I have a friend who's Hispanic that has it. I have seen white people who also have it. So it's not catered to just one ethnicity. It can affect any people, no matter who you are, where you live, how old you are. You've seen babies have it, you've seen adults have it. I got it now as an adult, but you have some people who are just babies who have it.
You're absolutely right. It really doesn't have a predilection for males versus females or any ethnicity. However, what I find is that people who have lighter skin, a lot of times they don't even know they have vitiligo. Sometimes they'll come see me for something else, and I'll happen to look at their hands or the corners of their mouth and say, oh, it looks like you have a little vitiligo. Versus someone with darker skin, it's more noticeable. And so I think that's why sometimes people think, oh, it doesn't affect people with lighter skin, but it can. It's just the contrast is not as noticeable. And so just for the listeners too, vitiligo, how you'll notice vitiligo is you will get white spots on your skin, and not just a light spot, but true, like we call it, milky, chalky white, which is what we call in dermatology depigmentation, where the skin has totally lost any melanin that it has. And so the more melanin you have in your skin, naturally, it's going to have more of a contrast. So you're absolutely right. And yeah, there's this sort of bimodal presentation where people either get it as children or they get it in your age, like 20s to 30s. And like you said, there is no cure, but there are treatments. And people have a wide range of severity, don't they? So some people might just have one little patch, but for someone like you, LaTrese, like yours was pretty progressive.
Mm-hmm. Over time, I was actually brown. So I was a brown skin girl. I could play in the sun all day. I could do all of the things that I wanted to do. But once my skin started to depigment, it changed completely. And for maybe like in 2009, I was completely colorless from my head to probably my knee. So I was completely white, basically. And it just kind of changed things for me. And like my mother was very upset about the fact that I had vitiligo, and and I was kind of like, it is what it is, it doesn't hurt. I won't die from it. So that was like the main thing for me, is I'm not going to die from it, and it doesn't hurt, except when I go to the beach and I don't reapply and I get really bad sunburn. So you do burn super, super easy with the lack of melanin.
You have zero protection in your skin, right? So I love that you brought that up about your mom, because vitiligo, to your point, it's not life-threatening, but that doesn't mean to say it's nothing and it doesn't affect people. And in fact, I think it can be very psychologically traumatizing, not just for patients, but for their families too, especially when your identity is being a certain race or ethnicity, and then that's kind of gone in a race. So were you always able to have that attitude of, oh, it is what it is? Or did you ever go through a period where it was difficult?
I think my most difficult period was when my skin was really patchy. So you'd have brown. It was like a mixture. It was almost like ice cream with little specks of color. And that was probably my most challenging period, because when you go out in public, people are staring at you, people are looking at you, people are pointing at you. And instead of asking, hey, what happened to you? A lot of people thought I was burned. Kids were just kind of a little freaked out about it. So, you really have to kind of put on another shield of armor to not let your emotions overtake the fact that you are going through this, because nobody knows what you're dealing with except for you. And so for me, I just kind of got this layer of tough skin. So if people would stare at me, I would stare back at them. So it's kind of like, I would stare at them until they looked away. So it's kind of like, well, you're staring at me, I would stare at you. So I really, I was an only child. So I always kind of had to fend for myself when, my mother worked and all of that. So I had to learn how to be like really independent and to be confident in what I was doing. So when my color started going away, it was kind of like, eh. And then, I had a couple of diagnoses that I went to one doctor, and she said, oh, well, you can take this medication, but you're going to have to protect your eyes because you'll lose your eyesight if you don't. And that was the turning point for me that said, do I want to be blind or do I want to keep my color? So that was really the thing to me that said, yeah, let it go. It's not that big of a deal. You're not going to die. You're not going to, fall off the face of the earth. But it's funny, when I would go back to like my class reunions, people were like, who is that? Who? They didn't know who I was. So, that's like always a challenging thing, is like people don't recognize you because they don't remember you as a light-skinned person. They remember you as a brown-skinned person.
I could totally see that. I see my patients who have these skin conditions. People are curious. It is different. They're wondering what happened. Why do they look like that? And I can see how that could be really challenging. And you really do just have to have a thick skin to let people know, hey, this is what I have. And I think that's probably why you started doing a lot of advocacy work. Am I right? To just help let people know there is this condition out there. So has your family now kind of come around and are supportive and everything like that for you?
Oh, yeah. My family and friends are super supportive. It's some of my friends will be like, and I just don't, you're still the same person to me. It doesn't even, it doesn't bother me. And my mother's like, oh, you're so beautiful. And I'm like, thanks, Mom. But, it's definitely one of those things that you have to educate them on. Like my granddaughter has never seen me any other way except with, a spot on my face. So she doesn't know any other me. But for people who've known me since I was little, they're all, very supportive. And, if any of them are going through it, they always reach out to me because I've had such a positive attitude about it.
Tell me about some of the treatments that you've tried. Did you try treatments for it?
Initially, I used to do where they would put like a topical ointment on your skin, and then you would stand in this ultraviolet light thing. So I did that. And then I did 4-minute topical. They had a topical cream that you could use. So I used that as well. I never really saw any improvement, which is probably why I stopped doing treatment, because I think my vitiligo is a little more hard-headed. It's like, no, we're good. This is happening. Let it go. So, and then again, like I said, the last treatment was when they wanted me to take an oral medication that would affect my eyesight. And that wasn't in my ministry to do that. Because as you can see, I already wear glasses.
Everything has risk, right? And you don't want the treatment to have more harm. And especially if you've sort of got this confidence about who you are with it. I think that's wonderful. So just for the listeners, typically what we'll use to treat vitiligo is something to calm the immune system down, because your own immune system, which is why we call autoimmune, your own immune system is attacking the cells that make pigment. And so things like topical steroids will be used, other what we call steroid sparing, like topical calcineurin inhibitors. And since I've left training, they now have these things called JAK inhibitors that we use for eczema, and topically that can be used. And what you also mentioned was something called, it sounds like narrowband UVB phototherapy, where especially when it's real widespread, you go into a like photo booth kind of, And you have very targeted wavelengths of UV radiation to help suppress the immune system. But those treatments can work, but especially when it's generalized like you have and it's all over, it can be really tough. And, it takes commitment to do this, especially like the phototherapy. You got to go in several times a week or buy one for your home. And it can be, again, there's no cure. And so it might come back, it might not. And I know they're looking at, oral medicines for stuff now. But the main treatment is really to try to calm the immune system down. And again, no cure. But some people, especially if they have more, just a few little patches, they can see repigmentation, but it is a lot harder when it's widespread like you have. That does lead me to my next question. Have you ever tried to bleach away the areas that still have pigment?
No. It's funny, whenever I go to the ocean, to the Caribbean, I'll always come back and I'll start repigmenting. So I'm like, hey, I wonder if I just moved to the beach. No, but I've never even considered bleaching away the rest of the skin because, of course, then that leads to something else. So, I'm okay with it. I have my days where I'm like, okay, so where did this come from? This wasn't here. Or circles around my eyes. Of course, you get a little bit of raccoon eyes. I used to have what I called a permanent lip liner.
Oh, wow.
Because my lips were brown. So, and then of course that went away as well. But I've never considered any type of treatment that's going to just take the rest of the skin color away. I don't have that much color to take away, so I'm okay.
I know that for some people, if they are pretty much depigmented, they will, go ahead and just treat the last little bit and even it out too. But have you always had that patch on your left cheek?
No, that is maybe been here about 2 years because as I mentioned earlier, I was completely white. I had no color on my face for a long time. And then I think it might have been when I had my 50th birthday, I went really close to the equator. And when I came back, I started getting color. So every now and then, so this popped up, around my eyes popped up. I used to have one of my pole instructor would be like, let me see your face. Let me see what's different. Because at one time, my nose right here was brown. I looked like Rudolph because I had this brown nose and then the rest of, my face was white and I had a couple patches on my face. So it comes and goes. It does its own thing.
Unpredictable too, isn't it?
Yes. My old supervisor called me a living piece of art.
That's a neat way to think about it. Yeah, it goes to show how powerful the sun is at suppressing the immune system. But I would just caution anyone out there, and I'm sure you don't just go out without sun protection at all because you will burn terribly on those other areas. So make sure you're sun protecting and don't try to just treat your vitiligo by going to tanning beds or purposely tanning because that other skin is really delicate. So you got to be really careful with that. But it just goes to show how naturally you are more prone to tanning. And so that pigment can easily come back.
Yeah, only in certain places.
Exactly. And not where you can predict.
I burn more.
Yeah, I believe it. And then you have to be careful about skin cancers too.
Exactly.
So vitiligo can be associated with other autoimmune conditions, diabetes, thyroid issues. You mentioned alopecia areata. Do you have other issues with autoimmune conditions? It sounded like you alluded to that earlier.
Well, other than the alopecia, my doctors do watch my thyroid really closely. I've had to they do an aspiration or something.
Yes.
In your neck just to check. So I don't have diabetes, thank goodness, but it runs in my family, so I am prone to that. Other than the alopecia areata, which has calmed down a lot, I don't have any other issues. I don't have lupus, so I'm thankful that my vitiligo has not betrayed me detrimentally.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. And for your alopecia areata, did it come back on its own, or have you treated that?
Well, initially, I went to get treatment and there was a cream, but my hair just kind of grew back on its own and it didn't happen all over. It just happened in certain spots. So it happened in the center of my head, which was my first spot. I was sitting on the couch one day and I'm scratching my head and I'm like, why is this so smooth? I had no hair. It was the size of a quarter piece of hair that was missing. And when I saw my hairstylist, I was like, hey, why didn't you tell me that I didn't have hair in the back of my head? She's like, I didn't want to upset you. I didn't know. I'm like, listen, and when you see those things, please let me know so I can figure out how to, get my hair fixed and whatnot. So luckily for me, I never lost all the hair like in the front of my head, but I have like hair loss on the sides, which is kind of like a lot of people get that anyway as they get older. But thankfully, mine never fell out all at once. It would fall out here, it would grow back, it would fall out here, it would grow back. So again, the thing that I was like, no, I'm good. I'm not gonna worry about it. If I think I got a good shaped head, at least I did have as a baby.
You've got such a great attitude about it. Yeah, alopecia areata, thankfully, it usually, not always, will just be these sort of like round, very like coin-like circular patches, and they frequently do come back for a lot of people. But yeah, alopecia areata is like a whole nother talk too, because there's such variation, just like with vitiligo. Some people just have one little area, and then some people do have it all over. So I'm glad that yours seems to be sort of a little less intense. So that's great.
Yes. And of course, it did change my hair texture, as I said. And I can't use color. So I never color my hair. It makes it really hard and crunchy. And I don't like that. So, this is it.
Yeah, this is you.
This is me.
I would love to know more about your advocacy work with vitiligo.
So aside from just ensuring that my friends or people in general that I don't know are comfortable with what's going on with them, I think it's important to let folks know that, again, this is not a death sentence. And of course, your appearance is going to change, but you have to be confident in yourself and who you are. So I go to conferences, I meet new people. There's a vitiligo conference that happens every year in June around World Vitiligo Day. Last year they were in Atlanta, and then the year before they were in Minnesota. So I went to those two. And you have people from everywhere, all different walks of life that attend this conference. Some people who are completely changed, some people who are patchy like I once was, some people who just have spots here and there. So I think it's really important to be a voice for those who are new to the disease or who don't understand the disease, even, folks who don't have vitiligo. So, I have a friend that reached out to me and said, hey, I gave a friend of mine your contact information because you're always so confident about what you're going through. And she's a flight attendant and she has vitiligo. And so, I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk to anybody. I'm happy to speak anywhere about it. I spoke to a group of young women one year and I had these pictures. I was like, hey, that's me. And they're like, what? So when you show people photos like this used to be me, and they're like, no, you're lying. That was not you. That was never you. So it's really a matter of ensuring that you are expressing the importance of, one, taking care of yourself, and two, understanding that this is just an autoimmune disease. It happens to a lot of people. You can't let it overtake your life. So one of my favorite quotes is, don't let your happenings destroy your happiness, which is really what gets me through having vitiligo, because just because this is happening to me does not mean I shouldn't be happy with life.
I love that. And sometimes I'll say you look different, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just a different you. And I find that this is the same thing too with aging. You're going to look different. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean you're ugly. It's just different. And this is what you are dealing with, and you can still be beautiful. You're still you. You can still love life and have a wonderful life. But I also think it's important to have representation, because if someone has never seen someone with vitiligo and you're the first person in your community or your family to have it, you can really feel like an outsider. So that's why I think advocacy, having these meetings, having World Vitiligo Day, it's so important, because for a lot of people, they've never heard of it and they've never seen it. They've never met someone with it. That's one of the wonderful things I do think about the internet and having these online communities, is that you can find someone with your condition or a support group. Even if you can't find it locally, there's a group for everyone. So yeah, if you are struggling with vitiligo, are there resources that you would recommend for someone?
For sure, I would definitely look up the World Vitiligo Foundation. There are a lot of different organizations that have online support groups. I can't think of the name of I get emails from them all the time, but it's a vitiligo group that you can join. and you can have people in your group that can reach out to you through this service. And, and also like if there are meetups in your city, a lot of cities have vitiligo support groups, either whether it's in Atlanta or South Carolina. I think it's very important that people be engaged with people who are going through the same thing that you're going through.
I find that's, at least for me, super helpful to know I'm not alone. I'm not going crazy. I've got someone out there, whatever condition you have. So I do find that such a blessing with the internet nowadays, that we really can connect with people like we've never been able to before, and find a support group in your area. If you can do a meetup, you might know the name of, there's a model now who has vitiligo, who's featured on prominent.
Winnie Harlow.
Winnie, yes.
And then there was a young girl that was featured in a Gap ad too a couple years ago. And, I'm sure she's probably an adult now, but yeah. So, I mean, it's really more prominent than what it was before, because you're seeing people like Winnie, and you're seeing all of these different people who are doing different things. So,
and being successful. And I think just also having a model with vitiligo is so key, because, models, these are supposed to be like the epitome of beauty, right? And what we as society value. And so to have someone gorgeous and beautiful with vitiligo, I think that's a great, powerful message. So I love that.
I feel like she just got engaged too. So, there's love for people with vitiligo. So, I think a lot of people feel like, oh, nobody will want me. I'm going to be by myself for the rest of my life. It's not that at all.
Yeah, totally. There's like a lid for every pot. I mean, there really is someone for everyone. And vitiligo, yes, it doesn't have to rule your life. It's something you have to deal with and that you have. But yeah, if you can come to the other side like you have with such a positive attitude and really embrace it and not let it define you, but let it just be one of your beautiful features. It's wonderful. I would love, LaTrese, what are your top 3 tips for someone listening who has vitiligo and they're just wondering what to do?
So I would say I kind of liken it to the word skin. So first you have to have self-love. Don't be down on yourself because you have vitiligo. It's, again, not a death sentence. Make sure that you have knowledge about your disease. So if seeing a doctor and doing treatment is what you want to do, then you should do that for your own self-satisfaction. Be an inspiration to others. Don't hide in a corner somewhere because your skin is changing. Be there for other people and let them know that they too, if they're suffering from something, whether it's vitiligo or cancer or, whatever it is, don't let that take away you being an inspiration to others. And then, network, meet up with people, talk to people, be there to share your story, listen to other people's stories. I think it's just important that, you don't become a shell of yourself because you're suffering from any disease that's out there. You want to live life to the fullest. And people always say that, live life to the fullest. That's what I do. I love to travel. I'm always on the go. I go out to dinner with my friends. I go to concerts. So don't stop living because you've had a setback.
I love that. And I love that it's the acronym SKIN. So that's amazing. Yeah, I find with so many skin conditions, a lot of them aren't life-threatening, but because they're so visible, it can really affect people. They might have lack of self-confidence. They may not go out with their friends or date. Maybe they're nervous about being promoted in their job because of how they look. And so I think it's just super empowering to have people like you saying, hey, yes, I have vitiligo, but it doesn't have to define you. And I'm still living life to the fullest. So that's amazing. I hope people listening, if you have vitiligo, have found this inspirational, or someone with vitiligo. And if you don't and you've never heard of it, now you know. These people are still people and they just look different, right?
They may look different on the outside, but they're the same person on the inside. They have the same heart that they've always had.
Absolutely. And they may just need a little extra love from you. So be aware of that.
For sure.
LaTrese, this has been fun. I love having you on and for people to hear, not just from a doctor perspective, but from an actual person living through this, what it's like. So I think that's really powerful. I appreciate you being on here. Where can listeners find you, reach out to you if you're on social media or in anything like that?
They can find me at L Darcell Writes. So LDARSELL Writes, WRITES, on Instagram.
Wonderful. Well, I will definitely include that in the show notes along with the vitiligo resources that you shared. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next week.